Welcome back to Sharp in the Morning, 6:37 now. News Talk 550, KFYI. And joining us in studio this morning is retired Lieutenant Colonel Wendy Rogers, who's running for Congress, trying to unseat Kyrsten Sinema. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
It's an honor to be here, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, we only met briefly a few weeks ago when you came out, and it was really great to see you at the Military Assistance Mission 9/11 Freedom Breakfast, and we just had the briefest of moments to talk. So I was really looking forward to this morning. Tell me a little bit about Wendy Rogers. Now I know you're a pilot. You served in the Air Force. You got a military family. But what have you been up to since you left the Air Force?
Well, interestingly, my husband and I came back to Arizona. We were both stationed here, he in graduate school and I for pilot training at Williams Air Force Base, now Mesa Gateway Airport. Mm-hmm. So we chose Arizona to come home to. This is where we have our home inspection business. And we started humbly out of our living room in Mesa, which that part of Mesa is in District 9, as it turns out. And we homeschooled our children. They were 6 and 9 years old when each of us retired from the military. And we started our business, and we built it. We built it, President Obama. Excuse me. And we started out of our living room. Our kids would come along on presentation appointments with me as part of their day. And people would say, well, why aren't your kids in school?
This is school.
Yes.
That's great.
They are in school. And I used to be very emphatic that they could not say the word like all the time.
Yeah.
Or you know.
Uh-oh.
And then I
wouldn't have done very well at your homeschool.
I began teaching a class for other homeschooled students. We had a co-op, and I would teach a class on public speaking. And I would tell each of the students, you need to bring 2 rolls of nickels to class. And I didn't tell them why. And then when they all showed up, I would video their first public speaking. And these would be, say, junior high-aged kids. And at the time, they were older than my kids. And we'd video them, and then I'd charge them a nickel for every time they said like. And by the end of the 10 sessions, we had so much money, we bought pizza and had a great old time. But
wow,
boy, we cured them.
That's funny. That's funny. How do you get from Air Force pilot, home inspection business owner, and homeschooler to I'm going to be in Congress? Take me through that process in your mind.
That's a great question. In fact, I had that recently on another show. Or actually the NPR reporter, the gal who followed me on the bicycle last Saturday, which...
That's how I imagine, by the way, all NPR reporters are all just riding around on bicycles, but okay.
Right, that was an expose done yesterday, and she asked me that, did you think about running for office when you were on active duty? And I honestly said, no, it never occurred to me. I began to take an interest in running for office during the John McCain run for president. I became just fascinated. And by then, both of our children were on their way, launched, and nearly through college. And our business was doing okay. And so I began to look into it. And then I did my research. I didn't even decide to run until I had talked to a number of local people who had been in office for about 6 months. I do my research before I make a big decision like that.
If you get elected...
When
you get, okay, fair enough. If and when you get elected, and say, for instance, Martha McSally gets elected, would you two fly back together to Arizona? Would you just get your own plane and just do that?
She's great. Martha, I just talked to her yesterday. We were at an event. Martha was actually a cadet at the Air Force Academy when I was there as an air officer commanding, which is a squadron commander of cadets. And, we actually knew of one another as women do, because there are so few.
Right.
When I was a pilot in the Air Force, of course, I was restricted to flying transport aircraft or trainer or tanker aircraft, and in my case, I flew transport C-141s. And also, interestingly, our son George was born at the Air Force Academy, and I, as an air officer commanding, had the dubious distinction of being the first one to become pregnant and have a baby
wow.
as an air officer commanding. And then And then the subsequent year I was there, I flew as a flight instructor. I had an interesting experience when I moved to Germany. My husband and I were stationed there, and I was flying Learjets. And I had our son, and he was about a year and a half old, and this young woman lieutenant got on board, and she said, "I know you." And I said, "Well, I don't really remember you. How do we know each other?" She said, "You were the pregnant AOC when I was an Air Force Academy cadet." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "But you don't understand. We female cadets at the Air Force Academy did not know that a woman pilot in the Air Force, once she had a child, could still come back to the cockpit."
Wow.
And she said, "We saw you walking around and asked, 'Who is that?' And then it was explained to us that, yes, a woman pilot in the Air Force can have a child and come back to the cockpit." And so you never know the example you set just by walking around.
Yeah. And I'm the father of two daughters. One who I've desperately tried to talk into the military. At the end, I'm like, "Hey, listen, Coast Guard, they save whales. You want to, and now we have a baby. And to me, this is tremendous. I so value what you've done because it's somebody for my daughters to look up to, and it's somebody who says, "Hey, look, barriers, schmarriers. Let's just do this thing."
Well, that you're a wonderful father to talk to your daughters in that way, and I often am approached over the years because I used to do interviews for Senator John Kyle every November for prospective Academy candidates, and there is an element of the parent wanting it for the child. Mm-hmm. The child has to want it herself or himself. And when we interview these candidates, it becomes apparent and clear at the get-go as to whether or not the aspiring candidate wants to go or his parent wants him to go.
Right, which doesn't really make for very good boot camp, by the way. He's like, "Dad, what did you get me into? This sucks. This is terrible." Wendy Rogers is our guest this morning. She's running for Congress, of course, in CD9, and we're going to have more with her, including, I want to get into some of the issues. It's good to get some background and get to know you a little bit, but I want to talk about what really you want to tackle when you get to Washington, if you get to Washington, of course. That is next here on Sharp in the Morning. 6:51, it's News Talk 550 KFYI. It's a few more minutes of Sharp in the Morning, and our guest this morning is Wendy Rogers, who's running in Congressional District 9 to replace Kirsten Sinema. And we were talking about your background. Of course, you flew in the Air Force, and you home inspection company. You homeschooled your kids, and you ride bicycles around on Saturdays to meet voters. That's kind of cool. I like that because you're reducing the carbon footprint and you're making up for all that fuel that you expelled as a pilot, by the way.
There you go.
That's good. Tell me a little bit about your issues. What's the number one thing? It's hard as a freshman congressperson to get a whole lot done, but what would be the first thing you'd like to sink your teeth into if you get elected?
To do something more for national security than what the incumbent is doing. Right now, that is on the forefront of people's minds. In fact, in our district, which is densely suburban, we have a phenomenon occurring where the soccer mom has now become the security mom. Mm-hmm. And there are so few veterans in Congress now. Congress is comprised now of only 19% military veterans. Wow. Back in 1960, it was 80% military veterans.
What a difference.
So my hope is to serve on the House Intelligence Committee. And I actually met with Chairman Mike Rogers, no relation, though, from Michigan, who's the chairman. And he told me two things. He told me in the basement of the Rayburn building. He said, number one, he said, "Colonel Rogers, you know what a top secret clearance is." Mm-hmm. I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And he said, number two, the House Intelligence Committee is a committee where the members make decisions on life and death.
Oh, yeah.
And he looked me in the eye. Our daughter was with me, and it was a very sober discussion. There are very few, if any, other military members on that committee. I think maybe one or two, if I'm not mistaken. That is where the rubber meets the road, if you will. And it speaks to a larger gap there, as I say, in Congress, where we don't have very many uniformed military members. And so when you have a uniformed member go to Congress, you are sending someone to Congress, me, who knows how to be a team player, who knows how to lead but also to follow, who knows how to listen, who knows how to prioritize her time, and understand what the pressing issues are in this country. And right now, we have ads up on TV, which, of course, have become the shot heard around the world.
Right. We talked about them here on this show. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That speak to two votes in particular that the incumbent Kyrsten Sinema made, one of which was to allow Guantanamo Bay detainees to go back to their homeland to make war again on the American people. And the other being the fact that she wants to she voted to have terrorists tried on U.S. soil under our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, but that does not include trying enemy combatants on U.S. soil.
Right. No, that's a different story. They're not citizens, and they're not inside the United States. These are people captured on the battlefield.
Exactly, and that speaks to a naivete and a political correctness.
Yeah.
And a method of legislating, of sticking a wet finger up into the air to see which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah. So intelligence, is there what would you do for Arizona in Congress?
I would keep Arizona safer.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, sorry about that. Any years left there?
We're good.
Okay.
Everything I am about is to defend my country.
We're running up against the clock here because we've got to go to the news. Tell everybody where they can find out more about Wendy Rogers.
WendyRogers.org. WendyRogers.org is my website. I would be so grateful for people to donate. It costs money to keep these ads on air, and they are very compelling, and they are working. But we need folks, good, hardworking folks who are driving to work right now. I know my husband is, too, to his next home inspection. We need folks to donate.
All right. Thank you very much. It's been really a pleasure to get to know you a little better. And come by and see us again, will you?
Thank you, Jim.
Especially if you get elected to Congress. Then we can hang out, hang out with a congressperson, all this kind of stuff. That's kind of cool. It's already cool enough hanging out with you anyway, just being a lieutenant colonel and all that.